Hey, it's Shabes. It's not hard to point at visual similarities and call them references. Tears isn't the first Zelda game featuring flight. Wind Waker originated the glider, which was more like falling with style, and in Skyward Sword you could ride Loftwing birds and skydive, which is more like just falling. However, Tears doesn't just have gliders and skydiving. You can use ancient Zonai technology to craft your own planes, hot air balloons, and hover bikes. Building and riding your own flying machines is such a distinct thrill from just riding a bird or falling with style. This is something you made. I, for one, get much more emotionally invested in something I created than a tool I was given. And this mechanic in Tears is what draws this game closest to, well, flying machines are one of Hayao Miyazaki's most enduring features, including Nausicaa and Lapida. Not simply the act of flying, most of Miyazaki's flying machines, and Tears for that matter, are open air, so you can feel the wind and see how high up you are. The danger is always present, and that's what makes it so exciting. Contrast this with the Tolmekian airships, or Goliath and Lapida. They're always closed off, so the air feels stifled and dull. Exactly like a commercial aircraft. These are merely mechanical modes of travel. More importantly though, the characters we see aren't even the ones piloting them. In Tears, it matters that you are the one steering and controlling the vehicle. Any mistakes or poor decisions are all on you. And the most thrilling open-air vehicles of Miyazaki's are all piloted directly by the characters we're following. It doesn't even matter how much verticality is present in Tears. The world is so big that flight becomes the de facto method of travel. And I was so daunted and excited to fly nearly every time. And that's not Tears' only link to Miyazaki's movies. I don't want to just point at Link's arm and call it a Mononoke reference. Their connection runs deeper than surface-level symbolism. This game feels like a Miyazaki movie. But more than that, several Miyazaki movies feel like Zelda games. And that's what I want to explore. My favorite part of a Zelda game is the exploration, traversing the world, discovering new areas and people, and uncovering the whole map piece by piece. Tears of the Kingdom was pretty much crack for people like me, where not only are there 3 maps where you could pretty much explore all of early on, but the depths in particular have 120 different points to activate in order to reveal the entire map. This was the first and only thing I did in the first 30 hours of playing. What made this even more addicting was how most of the depths is pitch black until you activate one of those points. So I didn't even know where I was going or what was in store for me. This morbid fascination I had with the depths reminded me of Nausicaa's introduction scene and her morbid fascination with the toxic jungle. Of course, it doesn't hurt that both the toxic jungle and the depths are stylistically almost identical. There's no edible food to be found in the depths, and when exposed to gloom, your hearts won't heal until you leave for the surface. Humans can't even breathe without a mask in the toxic jungle, so Nausicaa has to come up for air eventually too. And yet she, and myself playing Link, can't help but be drawn back in over and over again. It creates this amazing juxtaposition of being totally in love and unafraid of this savage, unfriendly, scary, dangerous world. None of Miyazaki's anime feature any maps. The Nausicaa manga certainly does, but it's not a component of his anime language, because he does such a good job mapping it all out for you. Trixie has an Old But Gold video about Spirited Away and how Miyazaki maps a setting, and it applies to most of his movies. The camera sticks with the hero as often as possible, tracking them through the area with clear direction and some distance away from the camera for the audience to see everything. From the moment Patsu and Shita wake up in his house to the moment they're separated over 25 minutes later, the audience almost always knows exactly where they are and which way they're going. It seems obvious to point this out, but this is literally the basics of not just Zelda games, but most video games. And it's not just an important functional choice, but an appealing one. This character tracking is what really makes games interactive. It's not simply a ride on rails. You make the journey yourself. In a strange way, despite being a passive experience, Miyazaki makes his movies so engaging with this technique. His films somehow feel interactive. When Patsu and Shita are later exploring the titular castle, it's almost like we are exploring it along with them. Because I was recording game footage for this video, I played in pro mode for much of my playthrough, which made the land of Hyrule feel even bigger than it already is. I don't speak for most players, but I can imagine some of them feeling daunted or bored with the idea of prolonged, repetitive traveling. Not just with Tears or Breath of the Wild, but Wind Waker as well, or even Ocarina of Time. The Ocarina map is pretty tiny in comparison, but I'm sure all of us still spammed the A button rolling around so we can get to where we're going just a little bit faster. This is a feature, not a bug. I think about the travel montage early in Princess Mononoke, showing Ashitaka's journey away from his village. It's just a few scenes, but takes up a whole minute, and we aren't told how far or for how long he travels. Now, Miyazaki is smart to have this montage set in between the inciting incident and a cool action scene, and the Tears of the Kingdom director Fujibayashi isn't foolish enough to make these Zelda maps totally barren. But the simple choice of making these worlds so big that it takes time and effort to travel gives the audience that breathing room to be in the moment, that time to absorb their surroundings, to enjoy the ride and not ask, "Are we there yet?" It really is the necessary tissue that connects the viewer to the experience. And also, to give more credit to Mononoke, to revel in the majesty of our natural world. Zelda has always been a series inseparable from nature. For its entire history, the franchise has always taken place in a vast natural setting, full of different terrains, locations, and weather. Even when the series introduces some sort of technology, which is especially dominant in Tears, it always plays second fiddle to the unrelenting forces of nature. I think my favorite scene from Laputa is when the villain Mushka forces his way into the futuristic throne room, the control center for the whole castle, and it's totally overgrown with weeds and vines. None of it actually stops Mushka, it just inconveniences and annoys him. But it's a quiet reminder of who's really in charge of the place. Nature doesn't have to be sentient or overly oppressive to make its presence felt. Tears of the Kingdom gives you a lot of power and control, introducing all these Zonai devices to be used as vehicles, tools, and weapons. But very few of those are going to save you from falling off a sky island. Just as how Miyazaki makes you feel the height of Laputa. No matter how strong you become in the game, you can't just do whatever you want. It's a realistically natural world, as well as a fantastical one. The physics and chemistry engine of Tears is as impressive as it is unrelenting. Rain, lightning, wind, fire, temperature, gravity, your own stamina, none of them might be enough to stop you on their own. But their presence is always felt. Oftentimes, nature is at the center of a Zelda game's story. A great flood, a scramble of the seasons, two worlds converging on one another, such is the case with Tears and the Great Upheaval, which contorts the land of Hyrule and plagues its regions with unnatural phenomena. Miyazaki is famous for his environmental themes, but how those ideas directly impact the story is just as important as the message behind it, because otherwise, what's the point? Why should you care? These worlds are all fiction, so to get you to care about what's happening to this forest or whatever, he connects you with the characters that this forest matters to. Miyazaki goes the extra mile in Princess Mononoke to not simply give you one side, but several perspectives, a whole town's worth. It's the people's relationship with nature that carry Miyazaki's messages about nature. When Link successfully cleanses each region of Hyrule, it's not just, oh, nature is healing. You see the characters that this tangibly helps. You don't just want to save the land of Hyrule for its natural beauty, though even that would be enough. You're saving this world for the lives that thrive within it. This might be the simplest reason why Ghibli movies feel like Zelda games, and vice versa. They both embrace the essence of life, both nature and humanity, which also means an understanding of death. The death of an empire, the death of a god, the death of a single life. Nausicaa's world is on the edge of death, 1,000 years since the collapse of industrialized civilization. And while Zelda has never been quite so blatantly apocalyptic, it has brushed with disaster. While these ancient robots in the floating islands seem to most obviously appear to be Laputa references, the more you play Tears of the Kingdom, I found that their actual place in the game feels most like Nausicaa. The Zonai constructs that are programmed to attack quote-unquote trespassers function similarly to the Ohm of the toxic jungle, albeit not as big and immediately threatening. The Ranger constructs, however, are almost all found in the depths, still inhabiting these abandoned refineries with statues guiding you to each one. Despite all appearances, this underground world is not just a dark wilderness. There's coliseums, mines, factories, civilization. And even on the Sky Islands, the Ranger constructs are still alive, working because that's what life does. The toxic jungle is not just a poisonous wilderness. Slowly and unbeknownst to everyone, it's working to purify itself of the poisonous soil underneath the surface, fighting, living in the face of death. I think a major reason why Nausicaa is my favorite movie of Miyazaki's, as well as the reason Tears has become my favorite Zelda game, both have to do with something about myself. While I'm not constantly staring death in the face or anything, I think our attitudes are similar. I'm the kind of person who burns my candle at both ends. I can do both, or all three or four. That's how I like to do things. When everything's happening at once is when I feel the most alive. Nausicaa loves her valley, and the jungle that threatens it, equally. The film is about her struggle in choosing to stand up for both. It's a bit of a joke, probably not exclusive to Zelda, but it's funny how this dire crisis of Hyrule is all up to you to fix. And yet you can spend all the time you want not dealing with that at all. Exploring, or collecting, or fighting, or cooking, or building, or writing, or solving other people's problems, instead of saving the world. Or perhaps as a means of saving the world. Eventually. I can do both. Or 5, or 10, or 120. I think the freedom, the agency, the courage, the potential foolishness, to do everything that we want, everything that we can. The choice to burn both ends of the candle.
That's life. That's life.